Hey, everybody. Welcome back for yet another episode today of the Concealed Carry Podcast. Except now I've swapped out he who is, I guess, this way in that seat or there.
It's true. I am not Matthew Merster.
Yeah. You're lacking on the facial hair side of the house
And the wisdom, you know,
and wisdom, which comes with the grayness in the facial hair.
it's a package deal.
Yeah, I've let mine go a little bit this week, and I'm happy to report there's still not really much gray in my facial hair. So I hope that stays true for a little while anyway.
I am plenty gray, but I'm no Matthew Merster.
Yeah, I have escaped the grayness side, but I did not escape the baldness part of the equation. So, oh well.
Which prevents us from knowing how gray you really are.
Yeah. Yep. Hey, Will, Sam, Mark, Paul, Common Clay on YouTube. That's a interesting name. Welcome. Glad to have you. Oh, Gray here too. Oh, Gray. Yeah. My son has a name, or my son has a friend whose name is Gray. It's an interesting name to me.
There's a lot of interesting names.
My favorite of all time, just so you know, is this lady that her name was Ladasha, where the dash part of her name was the literal dash, as in hyphen. So LE dash letter A. Ladasha.
Poor woman.
Go figure that one out.
Yeah.
Can you imagine how many forms online you're like trying to fill out, and like your legal name is LE-A, and it's like
No special characters allowed.
exactly right.
Wow.
Howdy, boys from snowy Lansing, Michigan. It's snowy here in Colorado. How much snow did you get at your place, Jacob?
Last night I shoveled about 2 to 4 inches, and today I shoveled another, maybe 6.
So I got more than you because I shoveled really 3 times yesterday. One of those I could have, it wasn't a lot. So like one of them was like 1.5 inches, and then the next time was like 4. And then last night about midnight before I went to bed, I shoveled like 7. And then we've got more today, and I haven't touched it yet. So I don't know. I'm guessing like another 3. Yep. I was impressed. I was like, wow. When like 3 days ago, they're like, yeah, we'll get like 4 to 6 inches. I was like, oh, okay. Nope. We got at least double that, at least here in my part of the city. Cool.
I feel like I gotta adjust my camera because you make me look shorter than I am relative to you.
No, that's accurate.
There we go. That's closer.
Well, sometimes I feel like I have to make my head bigger than yours because sometimes you're like really close. Yeah.
Well.
Hello, Wasilla Steve from Alaska. Well, we obviously know where in Alaska you're from. Is Sarah Palin just around the corner from you by chance?
Probably because she's in DC or New York, dude.
Well, she probably still has property in Wasilla.
That's a fair guess.
Cool. Let's do it. So we're gonna go ahead and record. This is actually we're talking about dry firing the F.A.S.Test, and this is our Shooter Ready Challenge video for the month of January, just a little bit behind. So let's do it in 3, 2, 1. This is the Concealed Carry Podcast, Season 5, Episode 7. Welcome to the Concealed Carry Podcast, part of the ConcealedCarry.com network, brought to you by Excess Sights, Today is Wednesday, February 2nd, 2022, as of the recording of this episode. And I am your host, Riley Bowman. And I'm joined today by the man, the legend, the whateverness, Jacob Paulson.
Yeah, I thought you were going to go with the man, the myth, the legend, which I've always wondered about that phrase. Like, no one wants to be a myth. It's like I exist. So I'm
Yeah.
glad you skipped that part.
Well, we might have called you the myth back in like September, August timeframe when you kind of
I was
disappeared
off
from the
grid.
face of the
Yeah.
earth.
Yeah.
But you are
Maybe.
here
Yeah,
and you're
I'm here.
alive, and we're thankful for that.
Definitely not a myth.
Today, we are going to be talking about dry firing the F.A.S.Test. So this is taking a specific drill and just discussing it and breaking it down a little bit, talking about some of the things we can learn from a drill like this and the various components that make it up. This is featured in our most recent Shooter Ready Challenge video, available at shooterreadychallenge.com if you want to go watch and check that out. Follow along and use it for some inspiration in your own personal dry fire practice and training this month. But this episode and Shooter Ready Challenge is coincidentally sponsored by LASR, or the Laser Activated Shot Reporter software. Jacob's repping the shirt. Good man. Look at that. The Laser X version of the software is my choice of dry fire software that I like to use. There's many options out there in the market. We recognize them, but frankly, guys, Laser was like the first, at least, that made it possible and reachable and obtainable by the average consumer, and the ability to set it up right in the comfort of your own home using standard equipment like your computer and webcam. It's just a phenomenal thing, revolutionary for its time. Their Laser X version is the best that they have brought to the table thus far, allowing you to use any internet connected device with a web browser. I run it right off my iPad most days, and it works awesome. So check out the Laser X version of software at laserapp.com. That is LASRAPP.com. To learn more, you can subscribe monthly, yearly, buy a lifetime license if you wish. That's what I recommend you do. Or if you still prefer the Laser Classic Edition, I believe that's still available as well.
It is.
So,
And that is my preference, I might add.
yeah. They both have strengths and weaknesses. As you know, I like the Laser X version.
It's all good.
I haven't played around with the Laser Classic Edition in a while. Have they added in some of the built-in like drills and challenges like exist in the Laser X? Is that still a Laser X specific thing?
That's a pretty Laser X specific thing. I think for me, there's some features in Laser Classic that are just probably never going to make it into Laser X,
Yeah.
just based on the nature of a web-based, SAS software versus a machine installed application.
Yep.
So, like you said, they both got their pros and cons, and certainly if you're a Mac person, you probably want LASRX.
Yeah, I have to agree with that. Which is one of the reasons why I was so excited when they came out with it. Guys, check out again lasrapp.com. Also, today's episode is sponsored by our title sponsor. Again, that's Excess Sights. We had a good time seeing those folks again at SHOT Show a few weeks back, visiting them in their booth, checking out some of the newer products. Was really enthused to see some of the additions to their lines. Suppressor height sights in the R3D series, especially for me, that was intriguing to me. Also, the F8 night sights they continue to make, and they're awesome. They got suppressor height ones as well. And they just continue to add additional models to the lineup as far as different models of guns that their sights are available for, especially in the R3D line and also the F8 line. So check out excesssights.com. You need quality sights so you can see and process visual information as quickly as possible in a stressful incident using your gun. High contrast, high visibility sights are key, especially if you're not using like a red dot. All right. The cool thing is if you are running a red dot, and now with these suppressor height sight versions from Access Sights, you've got an option where you can have your backup sights be from Access Sights as well. So The fact is, most gun manufacturers, their factory sites aren't really adequate. So that's why I recommend you give XS Sites a look. XSsites.com. That is XS, the letters XS, sites.com. And then finally, sponsor of today's episode being Barrel Block. That is BARREL, Barrel Block with a K, barrelblock.com. All right. If you're doing dry fire, you should be using Barrel Block, especially if you're not using something else in place of it, such as like a laser cartridge trainer device sort of thing. Um, Barrel Block is my preferred tool of choice for dry fire practice, especially. I'll tell you something. Just a week ago, less or a little less than a week ago, I was in San Antonio getting ready for a class. Decided to do just a little dry fire practice in my hotel room. Well, it's a hotel room, and yeah, walls are thin. You don't have a lot of safe directions. I don't have my usual setup, my dry fire dojo here at home. Throw the barrel block in the muzzle or in the chamber of my device of my gun. That's weird. The device. Yes, my firearm device. Put the barrel block in there,
My
and away I
bullet
went.
slinging device.
So, I did a little dry fire in my hotel room right there with the barrel block. It was awesome. So, check out barrelblock.com. Anything else you want to add, Jacob?
The website's blocksafety.com. I think barrelblock.com will work too. It'll redirect you,
does.
but bloksafety.com, I think it's the
I use the sites that are easiest for people to remember.
good for you, Riley. Good for you.
Use either one. They both will get you there.
I'll just add that the price of barrel block is $12.99, and it comes with 3 mag blocks. It's the most affordable thing in the gun world ever. So do that.
Yep. All right, let's get into our topic today. So, as was mentioned, we are using as inspiration for our discussion today the Shoot Rate Challenge from this most recent edition, which I just decided, hey, let's take a famous drill, one that maybe not everyone's aware of, but certainly if you've been in the shooting community for any length of time, you've probably heard about or run across some talk about something known as the FAST drill. A lot of times people will call it, but the full name, the true name, is called the Fundamentals, Accuracy, and Speed Test. So it's an acronym, F.A.S.T. And so really, if you just say the FAST, like you actually are covering all the bases as far as what it is. If you say FAST drill, then it's kind of redundant and also not exactly the same thing. Or if you say the FAST test, which sometimes I say, also redundant. But anyway, that's what it is. It is a really simple drill to do. You can shoot it at 7 yards in live fire. You want a 3x5 card horizontally placed, representing a head target, with an 8-inch circle representing the body target down below. You can shoot it on like an IDPA target and throw a 3x5 card up there, or you can shoot it on our new, soon to be available targets from concealedcarry.com, which has already a 3x5 card in the head and a 8-inch circle in the body. Either way, you set up the F.A.S.Test, 7 yards, 3x5 for a head, 8-inch circle for the body. On the draw, you place 2 rounds into the head target, perform a slide lock reload, and then fire 4 shots to the body. And the standard is to try to get that done in less than 5 seconds to be considered, worthy of a fast coin run. Those that could pass the F.A.S.Test 2 times, I think back to back, in a class with the originator, Todd Lewis Green, and now with his what's the word? He who is carrying on the legacy, that is Ernest Langdon, then you earn a fast coin. And just this last weekend, the 23rd coin was awarded. So I'd like to think that dude, just happened to earn that last week just after I published a video about it. So he must have watched it and done some dry fire, thanks to me. Anyway, it's a very challenging shooting drill. especially to do on demand, to do it back to back consistently in less than 5 seconds. Now, if you could do it in less than 7 seconds, it's still considered, a very sporty time. But everyone wants to try to break that 5-second mark, and so I decided, hey, let's talk about it. Let's break it down and kind of show you how to work on it and practice it to get a little better at it. That was the idea.
Yeah, I have never achieved this test. I've never passed this test. I'm confident, I should just say I'm sure I can do it if I don't have to hit a target. Like if bullets can just whizzle anywhere, then I can get this done. But if I have to actually get all my hits, then I'm not currently capable of passing this test. But it's a fun exercise, drill, test. I don't care what word we use. I think that where I'm going to start this conversation is I think it's important to have a handful of drills or tests or exercises or whatever you want to call them that you perform regularly. I think that as shooters, we need to have some sort of benchmark of performance, some way that we determine how we're improving in various aspects. And the any given drill or exercise allows us to um, certainly see and determine how we're performing in a certain in those aspects, but also gives us a kind of simplified form of practicing the improvement to be better at certain aspects, right? So in the case of like the FAST test, and if I leave the T off, if I say like FAS test, the FAST test, is that technically accurate? Would
Yeah.
that work for you, Riley?
Yeah.
So in the case of the FAS test, I think it has a really fun aspect with the reload, something I don't practice a lot of, and so that's a really good challenge for me because there's a significant change in cadence from what is a relatively precise shot on those headshots, and then I have to perform a very fast reload, and then I have to and then I can speed up the shots with the body shots, right? So there's a change in cadence with the reload in the middle, and that adds a certain degree of difficulty, I guess. But I think this is a good one to make one of those 2 to 3 4 kind of exercises that a person can perform regularly to test their current skill level.
I agree, and that's an important distinction when we're talking about drills like this. And actually, Tim Herron just had a really great post about this today, where he was talking about there's people that will take drills and almost like use those drills as their practice or as their training. And he's like, that's not really quite right, because really you should take some of these drills, especially the standardized ones, and use those as the test, as the evaluation, which, by the way, I think is why Todd Green called it the FAST test,
Yeah.
Intended to be an evaluation of performance, not necessarily something that you shoot and practice exclusively just to get good at this one particular thing, meaning, as a drill. And so I really appreciated Tim for putting that post up, and completely agree with that. And so, there are times where I will shoot a particular drill several times as part of a practice session. And if people see me doing that, it's less a part of it is, well, let me see what I can do here. The other part of it is me gathering data to then be able to determine, like, where am I at performance wise. And like, if you only shoot it once, it's like, well, okay, that's fine, but was that an outlier, whether on the good side or the bad side? Was that a great performance? Was it a poor performance? Right? Because I could have fumbled something. Just, I only did it the one time, so I fumbled the reload, and like, it is what it is, because I'm only going to do it once. And it's like that's not really a fair evaluation either. I kind of like Bill Blower's approach. If you watch some of his content out online, where he'll shoot certain drills, like, say, 10 times, and then throw out the best and the worst runs, because that usually takes care of the outliers, if any. And then what you're left with is a pool of data that's just a little bit better to use in terms of getting an average of performance. And I think that's a pretty smart approach. And so I've like, I'll typically make note of what my what my top times or, my personal bests or personal records or whatever are, just because it's like, okay, that's of note. All right, I noted it down. But I don't usually dwell too much on those things. But if you asked me a question of, hey, Riley, like, what's your time on XYZ drill thingy? And I would say, well, it's probably about this. And that's because number one, it's based around what I know I can do as an average, like a guaranteed level performance typically, um, or an expected level performance typically. And it's also I'm going to give you an approximation because that target's always moving as well. So anyway, the point is to say is that drills like the F.A.S.Test are a great evaluation tool and should be used as such. But yet here I am doing it as a demonstration as one of our drills for a shooter ready challenge. But that was to use it as an opportunity to show like, okay, what are the different components of that? And then like how can we identify our weaknesses? And when I demonstrated the F.A.S.Test in shooter ready challenge, I was like, my reloads suck. Like draw, well, pretty good. Like, I could definitely smooth some things out there. Some of the shots were, might have gotten a little crazy here and there occasionally, but mostly that was pretty good. Like my hits were generally pretty good. My speed and my splits or whatever, pretty good. But it was like very apparent that my reload was the weak point. And so using it as that evaluation, and that proved true whether I was shooting it in accuracy mode, speed mode, or so-called real mode, is like it always kept coming back to me for me to the reload itself. And so, okay, gotta go back to working on reloads, which like you, I don't practice. So, I mean, I'm sure I practice them more than you do,
I'm
just
sure you do.
knowing you and having had conversations about stuff, and the fact that I actually do practice them occasionally from a competitive shooting point of view, but I don't practice them as much as I should, and I haven't done so in recent history, and it clearly showed as I filmed Shooter Ready Challenge.
Well, I mean, you practice everything more than I do would be the real like easy thing there. But I yeah, I think a person needs to perform an evaluation as often as a person wants feedback on their performance, right? So
Yep.
if that's doing it at the beginning and the end of a practice session or several times throughout, like whatever that looks like, I think it's fine. Um, I I really appreciate that this is a multifaceted drill, and most, I'm calling it a drill now. I just don't care what we
Which
call
is
it.
fine.
So
It
yeah,
it it is a
everybody will get
drill.
over it. Sure. I
Mhm.
mean, it depends on the context in which I use it, I suppose, if it's a drill or a test. But anyway, I appreciate that it's multifaceted. And most drills are multifaceted because the idea is to identify the point of failure or the point of the greatest potential improvement, right? So in this case, if I have a draw, so that's a potential point of failure or a potential point of improvement. I have what would be considered precise shots, like I have to have a pretty good sight picture for those headshots. I have a reload. That's a legitimate, specific component, and then I also have several subsequent, quick shots that require less precision sight picture.
Mhm.
So there's really, at least four, very standalone components that I can analyze if I, am doing it properly, and I can say where am I failing. I have 2 points of feedback, right? I have accuracy and I have speed. So accuracy is really easy to measure if you just have the target, right? All you need is the target, and you can effectively buy stuff or print stuff off the computer or whatever. And then speed obviously is going to require a shot timer in order to measure this. But I'm going to be able to look at those components and say, okay, this is how long it takes me to get first shot after the beep from draw. This is how long it takes me to perform my reload, the time between shot 2 and 3. This is how long it takes me for my splits between shots 1 and 2, and this is how long my splits are between shots 3, 4, 5, 6. So those pieces of feedback, along with the accuracy, whether I'm hitting or missing, are going to tell me where my breakdowns are. What I really appreciate about the Shooter Ready Challenge and the way you approached it, and I think this is a really good way to approach basically any exercise or drill that a person performs, is you kind of do it in accuracy mode and then speed mode, and then you combine the two. And this is also something we see the LASRX kind of drives with their built-in challenges and drills that are built into the software. And I really like this approach because the idea is I need to first like establish a baseline for my ability to perform the accuracy standard. You know, time, who cares about time? Like, I just need to set a baseline for I'm able to get these shots. And if I do that several times, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 times in dry fire, I don't have to worry about ammo, so I might as well do it a lot of times. I'm gonna start to creep up the time like naturally anyway, until I kind of start to kind of hit this barrier where I know I push it a little too far. But it allows me to kind of establish this bench line for I can do this, I can get these shots, I know what's required. The motions aren't going to change when I go faster, right? So making sure I got the motions down really, really well, that's fluid and that it's clean. My target presentation's good. My grip and my draw and all the draw stroke and all those things are really solid. Like, establishing that baseline in a more relaxed environment without adding a lot of stress, really, at very least, allows me to knock some rust off if I haven't been doing this in a while. And second, it allows me to establish the correct way to do this without rushing it. Because inevitably, what happens if I watch the video footage when I perform drills and exercises, if I don't really lock down the sequence, first slowly, at a very good standard pace, then what will happen is if you just, call me on the carpet, I just can tell you my personality and the way I am, I will always go too fast and miss. Like, it's just, that's how it's going to end up for me, is I'm just going to rush it. And if I watch the video afterwards, I'll be like, oh man, that was sloppy. Like, I'm missing because I'm trying to force myself to move so fast that I'm failing to actually do it the way it should be done. So anyway, I really like your approach in the shoot ready challenge. You do it slowly, establishing benchmark of accuracy, and then you throw like accuracy to the wind. You're like, I'm just going to see how fast I can move, and you just go, right. And you're still looking at the data, and you're saying, okay, this is what my times were, my accuracy was when I was just focused on accuracy. This is what my accuracy is, and these are my times when I'm focused on speed. So you kind of have these extremes on both ends, and then you're like, okay, let's do it right. Let's get my shots, and let's see how fast I can move while doing that.
Yeah, it's a concept that's not entirely new to our industry, I guess. I mean, Steve Anderson, for instance, talks a lot about accuracy mode, speed mode, and in his world, match mode, since he's a little bit more competition focused. And actually, I was pleasantly surprised, I guess. I don't know, surprised is the right word, but I was like, oh, I forgot about this, or maybe I just didn't quite notice it in the same way when I listened to it probably 2-3 years ago. And there's an interview that I re-listened to with Rob Latham, and it was on the Daniel Shaw's podcast called Gunfighter Cast, which I think is now called the Mag Life or something like that. And he interviewed Rob Latham and was talking about how to practice like a champion or something, or how to train like a champion, I think was the title of the particular episode. And Rob was talking about how, like, something he would do would be, let's say, he uses it as an example, putting up a target at 50 yards. It's a long ways. 50 yards. And he's like, now I can probably draw and put 6 shots on that target in 1.6 seconds at 50 yards. And like, that would be going at the limit of my physical limit in terms of speed. And, I'm pretty good. Because Rob's funny if you listen to him talk, because obviously he knows he's good. He's like, I'm pretty good. I might get a couple on there. But the important thing at that point is not so much, I'm not getting hits really. I'm just focused purely on speed. And then he talked about, what he would have to do to back that off and get, more consistent performance. And it was just interesting hearing his own logic. He didn't describe it in the way like what we are describing here in terms of accuracy mode, speed mode, and real mode or match mode, but he was basically talking about the same thing. And what he was getting at, by the way, his whole point was how you perform like a champion is you don't. He basically said novices go to matches, and by the way, this describes me pretty well, although I'm getting better at it. Novices go to matches and try to shoot at 100% of their ability, like all the time. And that is what creates the failure points. He's like, I'm not doing that. He's basically trying to give his consistent performance, which is going to be like, he said like 80%, 85%. I've heard some guys talk about like, I want to give my 90 to 95%, so I'm staying within what I can do within what my 100% is, and can give that performance 100% of the time, consistently, all the time. And it was just really interesting re-listening to that episode and reminding myself of his perspective on that. And it's basically talking about this very thing. So let me back up just a little bit to this point of accuracy mode, speed mode. Accuracy mode, the way Steve Anderson talks about it, I think is quite good, because he says you're going to shoot, like, let's say a stage, an exercise, a drill, and you want to shoot it in a manner that where like you can hit every single shot perfectly, like every single alpha, every single bullseye, whatever the accuracy standard is that's required. Like you shoot that drill or standard or test or stage in a manner where you will get every single hit. And then what that does is, like, it proves to you that you physically have what it takes in terms of your technique, your skill level, your fundamentals. You have what it takes to hit every single shot in that stage or drill like accurately. You can hit every shot. You have that capability. Okay. And that's an important thing, is to have that confidence. Like, I know I can hit every single one of these shots. It's just a question of how much time will it take me to do it. Right. But you throw the speed side of the equation completely away and just ignore time. It's irrelevant. So I'm just going to do whatever it takes to hit these shots. Now, that should come back to some sort of visual processing focused process. That's a mouthful. Like, it should come back to a process that's primarily visual, because what's my gauge? Like, what's the word? My rheostat, if you will. Like, what determines when I send the shot or not? If I'm in accuracy mode, what I'm asking you.
Sight picture.
Yeah, when my aiming is good enough, I send the shot. So and then the irrelevant piece of it is however long that takes to do that. But the metric is when my sights or my aiming is good enough, then I send the shot. So, and that's actually a good thing, because it reinforces a good, proper behavior. So then we flip that around and we say, well, now let's throw out the accuracy side of the equation, and let's just see what the fastest is I can shoot this, even if I have a bunch of misses or mics. So what that does is it then shows you what you are actually physically capable of. How fast can I move? How fast can I draw? How fast can I work the trigger? How fast can I reload? To an even almost unreasonable level. Now, we want to be careful not ever push it so far that we become unsafe, right? So we push ourselves speed-wise as far as we can reasonably do so and remain safe, whether to ourselves or others. Like, in other words, I'm not throwing errant shots over the berm, right? That kind of stuff. So I shoot it as fast as I physically can. And what that does is establish what the limit of my current human functioning is, physical functioning is. And then it's like, okay, so I have here where I know I have what it takes to hit every shot required of me. And I know I have what it takes to do this whole thing in this amount of time. Now, where do we find where that comes together? That's easier said than done. But
the
way I think of
sequence,
it, the way I think of it is, I want to hold myself to the same process-focused approach of the accuracy mode of send shots as soon as I have appropriate amounts of aiming or aiming confirmation, and then do everything else, moving, drawing, transitioning, etc., as fast as I physically can.
Mm-hmm.
And if you do that properly, you find the correct merger of those two sides of the equation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good summary of what I was trying to communicate. I really, another thing about this particular test, drill, whatever, fast test, is that I really appreciate that you effectively get two different opportunities to present to target. Anytime you have to perform a reload, you have to represent to target, right? And for me, really trying to drive the skill of target presentation. And here soon, I'm committed to doing my red dot transition. So that's going to become even more critical that I have consistency in that target presentation. So I really like that about this test, is that I get to do one target presentation from the holster, from the draw, and then after I perform the reload, I get to do another one. And it's almost like that first one is often easier because it just by nature of life, I do a lot of practicing from the holster. In dry fire, probably one of the more common things I do is just draw the first shot, and so that's a much more natural sequence. But doing it after reload is a different kind of mental thing. It's not as established, and someone might say, well, yeah, but you're probably not going to do a lot of reloading. Well, that's true, but there's any number of things that I might have to do mid-fight that are going to cause me to have to present. I might have to move. I might have to, perform a clear some sort of malfunction. I might, there's any number of things that aren't drawing from the holster and presenting to the target that still are going to cause me to have to re-present to target. So that's another really cool thing about this particular drill.
Yeah, and I agree with you. So this drill is what Matt Little would call a combination drill, because you're combining multiple skills or skill sets, multiple facets of shooting into one drill. So draw, some throttle control, uh, reload, transitioning, right? Multiple presentations, I guess, right? So there's a lot going on. The major components here are what's the soonest you can get that first shot on target? Okay. What's your recoil management like? For instance, does it take you 1 second between shots to guarantee hits in that 3x5 card? Or can you get that done in 0.4? Right? There's a big difference there. And that requires excellent recoil management. You need that gun to return back to zero very consistently, so you can go draw, bop, bop to the head, just like that. If you can do that, you're well on your way. The reload is where I find that probably most shooters suck up the most time in that drill. But I can assure you that if your shooting is reasonably decent, if you can get the reload done in 2 seconds, even a little more than that, like, you still have time to get this done within the 5-second elite par time. Just as an example, like if you could make the first shot in 1.5 seconds, and I know that for some people that might be a stretch, but if you could do 1.5 second to the first shot, which is very doable, it's very doable. Anybody that shot Dave Spalding's 2-and-2 drill, like, that's basically what you're doing, is shooting a 3x5 card, 2 shots in less than 2 seconds. So if you can accomplish Dave Spalding's 2-and-2 or 2x2 drill, you can accomplish the fast test most likely. Okay. Because even at that point, let's say you're at 2 seconds putting 2 shots into that 3x5 card. If you take 2 seconds to reload, you're at 4 seconds. And then you've got 4 more shots, but really you got 3 more split times to measure at this point. If those were even quarter-second splits, you're at 4.75. See, and that's like, I could shoot it in that manner, 2 shots in 2 seconds, 2-second reload, and then quarter-second splits on the final 4 shots, and I'd be done in less than 5 seconds, and it would look like I was shooting at a very relaxed, moderate pace. And so that's kind of my point here, is like, there's time to get this done, but it's just all about like you got to identify which part of that you're struggling with. So most people seem to struggle with getting their hits on the 3x5 card. Okay. That's more of an accuracy standard and a throttle control one. So if that's a struggle for you, then spend some time shooting 3x5s at 7 yards. Push it back to 10 yards. Test yourself on 3x5s at 10 yards. Guess what? That'll make the 7-yard 3x5 card much easier. When you go back to it, you'll be like, oh my goodness, that looks so big now. Do my Jack Wilson test, 15-yard, one shot draw on a 3x5 card. Okay. And I say the standard there is do that in 3 seconds or less. For me, for myself personally, I like trying to achieve that in less than 2 seconds, and I get it about 80 to 90% of the time. And do that a couple of times, and then I go shoot 3x5s at 7 yards, and I'm like, oh wow, that because it's twice, it's half the distance now, so it looks twice as big, and it's like, oh wow, this is easy, right? So do whatever it takes to get good at placing 2 well-aimed shots on a 3x5 card at 7 yards. Okay, you get that behind you. Oh, now I realize my reload's taking me 3 seconds when it should take me at the very longest 2.25, right? And if you can get it down to 2 or under 2, like some people can do 1 second reloads. See what I'm getting at? Like there's plenty of room to advance the measuring stick, or your positioning on that measuring stick. So like work on the part that's slowing up the most. If you're dropping shots on the body shots, well, those are the easiest shots of the whole thing, right? They're very doable, and honestly, making those shots at quarter-second splits, very doable. So what I find is that most people, here's the problem, Jacob. And this is why it's important to approach shooting in the manner that I just described a minute ago when I was breaking down the accuracy mode versus speed mode and kind of how they meet together and how we get our max performance in that way, is that people become very results oriented. They feel the pressure of the time. They recognize, oh, I want to get this done quickly. I feel like the clock's ticking. I'm falling behind. So you start rushing some part of the process, which really means you start ignoring or disregarding part of the process, which in this case is, as far as making the shots, like just giving the appropriate amount of sight picture necessary, aiming necessary to hit the target, right? But because you get nervous, anxious, whatever, and rush and disregard part of that process, most people miss one of the headshots, or they just feel like they take too long on them, and so then they rush the reload and they fumble, because the reload's not all that different. There's still aiming involved. When you're reloading, your eyes should at the right time should go down to that mag well, and your eyes locating that, and that becomes a target for your support hand bringing the magazine up. And so you're like, target, mag, poof, goes into the gun, right? So I do that all the time. I fumble the reload on the F.A.S.Test all the time because I get anxious and I'm like, oh, it's taking too long, rush it, disregard my aiming of my magazine to the mag well. And next thing you know, you're going, fumbling the mag, and then you're even further behind, and then you rush the last 4 shots, and so you throw 2 of them. See, like it just becomes this compounding series of errors that are usually self-inflicted because we put too much pressure on ourselves. We become results oriented, and we lose sight of the process along the way.
Yeah. I'm trying to think what I can add to what you just said, and there's not much. I find that for me, a lot of this has to do with being able to build the grip properly, right? If I'm going to hit, it's one thing for me to hit one precise shot. 2 in a row requires that I really have built my grip properly so that the gun returns to where I want to be. And when you perform that reload, I'll tell you right now, I adjust my grip in order to hit the mag release. And I do that consistently. Some guns I don't need to, some guns I do need to. And so I just do it on every gun so that I can consistently hit the mag release and know that I'm going to be able to do it. So rebuilding the grip after the reload is really critical to do that properly. If I screw that up, and I'm more likely to screw it up than I am to screw up the grip out of the draw, then that's going to really screw me up, because those 4 shots into the body, man, I'm going to run those real fast. I'm going to get the target presentation. I'm going to get that rough sight picture, and then I'm going to let it rip, right? Boom, 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 boom. I'm just going to let those 4 go as fast as I can. And it becomes real evident if I've rebuilt that grip properly when I look at where those 4 holes are in the body. So the point is, if I'm doing a good job, then I make sure I rebuild that grip properly. And if it's not right, I lock it down before I start letting those 4 shots fly at the end of the string of fire. So anyway, another thought there for those who might be at a similar level as me, that I got to build the grip properly when I'm called on to shoot subsequent shots at the same place, whether it's 1 or 4 or 5, or they're precise or not. If I don't build the grip properly, the gun's not going to return to the correct point of aim, and it's going to slow me down dramatically, or I'm just going to miss every subsequent shot, right? So anyway, that's a greater challenge after I perform that reload.
Mm-hmm.
I'm more likely to fumble that and not get the grip back where and how it should be after I perform that reload.
So I'm really glad you shared your thoughts on this, because it provides some really good insight into maybe some of the little things that you could work on.
Right.
So question for you though: do I adjust my grip when I perform a reload?
I have
Yes or
no
no?
idea. I don't stare at
Yeah.
you when you shoot,
What do
Riley.
you think I do?
Uh, you got bigger hands than me. I don't know. I really don't have no clue what
Yeah.
you do.
I mean, this is something that comes up fairly often in various forums and groups online. People discussing reloads and talking about their gear and a magazine release button placement and this kind of stuff. And there's a lot of people are really concerned about, I should be able to reach that magazine release without adjusting my grip. And I'll tell you this much: I adjust my grip every time. I can barely hit the button with my thumb on my P320s. So every time I reload, I do that. See how the
Yeah.
finger shifted around?
Yeah. That's
Now the
that's
thumb,
very comparable to how I adjust my grip.
it's pretty much what you have to do. And then as soon as that's hit, my grip reestablishes. Okay. And that all happens in a split second as the spare mag is coming up and it goes in. And then the rest of reacquiring the grip is all with the support hand at that point, because this has already corrected itself. And that's just a learned uh, technique slash skill that needs to be worked on and practiced, so you get to where you can do that repeatedly and consistently. But it's not hard to do. It just is a matter of putting in the time. I used to be in the same, like, oh man, like I don't want to have to readjust my grip. Like I need to buy a different mag release, or buy a different pistol that fits my hand better, and this and that. And then I watched. It's an older video at this point. It's probably 10 years old. It's actually on Double Alpha Academy's YouTube channel, and they're one of Max Michel's sponsor. And it's just a simple reloading tip video that he filmed for one of his sponsors. And he's describing his reload process, and quite literally like talks about in that video how he has to adjust, like he adjusts his grip, hits the button, performs a reload, fixes the grip, and gets back on target. And he does reloads pretty fast. And I'm like, hot dang, world
Yeah.
champion, multi-time national champion, adjusts his grip when he reloads.
Yeah.
I guess it's
I,
not that big of a deal.
I've
So
seen Jerry Michalek and Rob Latham reload. They both adjust their grips.
I'd say most shooters do. So anyway, and then the other thing that you said that really stuck out to me is you said, well, I'm just, when it comes to those last 4 shots, I'm just going to rattle those off as fast as I can. And I'm thinking, well, there's your problem, Jacob. Like, why are you just, ripping off 4 shots as fast as you can work the trigger, versus being accountable to your sight picture for each of those 4 shots?
So that's a valid question and a valid point. And so I'll tell you what's in my head, and you can tell me if that's good or bad, I guess. But what's in my head is I know that if I lock down my grip really well, if I really have a good solid grip, and I present to target, and I get that first sight picture, and that first sight picture is good and strong, then I can run that gun about as fast as I can, and all the shots are going to go in roughly the same spot in terms of this kind of standard we're talking about, with the body shots. So I know that if I build the grip properly, I can run the gun about as fast as I can, and as fast as I can. By the way, we're talking, you know, point 0.18, 0.19, 0.20 splits is about my limitation. Then I'm going to get those shots. It's going to be fine. But the problem is that I shouldn't say most time, but a lot of the time, and certainly coming off a reload, I'm much less likely to get the grip built such that I'm capable of that level of energy. I'm just, you know, yep, because the first one is the first sight picture is where it should be. I I can't afford the overconfidence of believing that it will just for sure return to every spot, right? It'll return to the same spot after each shot. Um, and so, yes, if I just made sure I had the sight picture every time for every shot, that would be better. And I would know I was missing as I was shooting. Right, I'd be like, oh, that one's not going where it's supposed to. Oh, that one's not going where it's supposed to. But it's almost like I'm attempting to cheat by telling myself, if I build this grip properly and get the first sight picture where it's supposed to be, I can let it rip, because it should, and it does, and it has worked for me every time I build the grip properly at that level of that kind of standard. So I'm attempting to cheat effectively, and oftentimes my grip fails to allow me to cheat.
Right. But everything you're describing is ignoring the importance of being accountable to your sight picture. So just
Absolutely.
just something to think about. So, because like you, I mean, I have pretty excellent recoil management. Um and I can maintain things on target pretty well, just by holding really firmly on the gun, having an excellent grip and then just letting it rip. Uh, and that is primarily what's taking place at those closer distances, 3, 5, 7 yards. I can really let it rip, but I'm still watching my sights through all of that and monitoring them, and sometimes making micro adjustments on the fly. Like when I send one that's a little bit low, a little close for comfort, as far as like, ooh, that's getting low in the hit zone there, or left or right. By the next shot, not always, but a lot of the time I've made a slight correction in between, like just okay, bringing the gun back up a little more. Just I I know we're getting into stuff here that not many average shooters can probably you're probably just not there yet. But the point is like we want to always be, in my opinion, reinforcing accountability to our aiming, to our sight picture, in other words. And so if you're missing shots on a drill like the F.A.S.Test, and you're missing them in that body, especially, like, okay, maybe we're ripping them off a little too quickly and not paying attention to, or holding ourselves accountable to, what do we see in the sight picture. But basically, yeah, I mean, like we've broken things down, I think, pretty well. Now, if you're missing stuff because you're like, if you're missing the par time, for instance, you have a certain par time that you want to try to achieve, and you start looking at, analyzing the different splits and times and whatnot, and you look at your draw to first shot time, and that's slower than probably what it ought to be. Like, for instance, if you're not getting your first shot off until 2 seconds or more, like, okay, need to work on draw, right? Especially working on being able to draw consistently to the same location, especially when that location is relatively small. And so you want to do whatever it takes to create a practice session, and that's this. So let me just be clear. What I'm describing is we use the drill or the test, the thing that we use to evaluate, to demonstrate our weaknesses or opportunities
Expose
for growth.
deficiencies. Yeah.
Yep. And so now let's create the practice regimen that works on that thing that's holding me back. So maybe you normally do pretty well drawing to a full size, A zone or 8-inch target or something like that, like an IDPA target when you're shooting for the body. But then you find yourself struggling on hitting that 3x5 card consistently. Well, okay. What it is you are good enough to consistently fall within a larger target zone for that particular distance, but you just haven't refined that well enough for that smaller target requirement. And so more refinement necessary, more consistency necessary. I have found within myself that because there was this self-induced anxiety, that I was actually putting more effort into drawing that gun to that small target than was necessary, and that extra effort was actually what was taking me off target. And when I simply relaxed and backed it off a little bit from a emotional, mental anxiety sort of level, then my gun just more naturally came to the target right where I was looking. And that actually expressed to me that, well, I have the skill to get the gun there on target where I want it. I was trying too hard. I was over trying. And that's something that sometimes I think it gets overlooked by some shooters. The point is, we want to try to identify which part of this test we are struggling with. Again, whether it's draw, whether that's reload, whether that's hitting precise targets or less precise targets, whether that's rebuilding the grip, whatever it is, and then let that feed your practice plans of, well, now I need to work on that specific thing. Okay. And that brings us back to what would be more akin to what Matt Little calls an isolation drill, where it's like, I'm going to concoct a drill that focuses on this one thing so specifically because that's my weakness. And then I'm going to do it again and again and again and again and again and again until now that's no longer an issue. And then we can take it back to the combination drill and see how it performs, right? And then we're going to either confirm that the work I put in is working or it's not, or we're going to find the next piece, the next deficiency. And it's just this constant cycle of rinse or wash, rinse, repeat of, like this is really about how to get better and better and better as you continue to work on more and more things. This is the process I've gone through.
Mm-hmm. Good stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I think this was a surprisingly fruitful discussion today.
So surprisingly, thank you. I appreciate that.
and I'm not
Riley anticipated that this discussion wasn't going to be particularly valuable or useful. I'm glad we were able to surprise you by producing some value in the conversation.
well, it's one of those things like it's like, oh, we're going to talk about, dry firing the F.A.S.Test, which was our shoot array challenge for the month of January, and it's like, wow, I mean, it's not that complex of a thing, really. Like we could probably talk about that in 15 minutes and be done with it. But yeah, I feel like there was some meat to the conversation, and I think that was good.
I'm a meat and potatoes guy.
Folks, we remind you that our sponsors are today Laser App, or the laser activated shot reporter software. Go to lasrapp.com, laserapp.com, to learn more and get signed up today or purchase. Also, XS Sights, our title sponsor, xssights.com, and also barrelblock.com, barrelblock with a K.com, or if Jacob insists, blocksafety.com. to pick up a barrel block product in your choice of several calibers so that you're doing dry fire in a safe manner, at least a safer manner than maybe what we have traditionally done in this industry a lot of times. Knowing, and having the confidence that I have blocked off the chamber and barrel of my gun, that no ammunition can get into it, even if I make a mistake, even if I forget to remove ammo from the area where I'm doing my dry fire practice or whatever, and being able to visually confirm that by seeing the barrel block protruding from the end of the muzzle it's a nice comfort factor, and it's extra safe for us. So check them out, guys. Those are our sponsors. This was our topic today. Again, if you missed it, you can go watch the latest Shooter Ready Challenge video at shooterreadychallenge.com. And that brings us to a conclusion of yet another episode. Jacob, final words?
Yeah, I would just encourage you to actually go to shooterreadychallenge.com and watch the video. Every single month since October 2019, I think, Riley's been producing these monthly Shooter Ready challenges. And every single time we dedicate an episode of the podcast to discuss it. And there's value in both independently, I assure you. So if you're of the attitude of, well, I always hear you guys discuss the Shooter Ready Challenge here on the podcast while I'm in my commute or whatever, that's great. There's absolutely independent value in the discussion that happens here. And generally it's Matthew and you, Riley, who discuss the Shooter Ready Challenge. So there's absolutely value in that conversation that happens, but it's not a replacement for actually participating in the challenge. It is called the Shooter Ready Challenge for a reason. We are challenging you to conduct some dry fire. And while that sometimes can get dry or feel repetitive or maybe even boring, we're providing you a template to change it up each month. And at least for some degree of time, whether you do it for the whole month or for a week or for a couple of days, to do something different in your dry fire routine and to have somebody walk you through doing that. So please take the challenge and go to shooterreadychallenge.com, consume that video every single month, and take the opportunity to actually mimic that in your own dry fire practice and get some value from doing so. That's the core here of what we're trying to achieve. And I'll just add one other little quick disclaimer. We really don't want you to be discouraged if you go watch that dry fire challenge, or the Shooter Ready Challenge, and you determine that, oh, well, Riley's doing it with the SIRT pistol. I don't have a SIRT pistol. Riley's doing that with the LASR software. I don't have the LASR software. Riley's doing that with the laser cartridge. I don't have a laser dot or whatever. Like, figure out how to adapt it to you. That's fine. Like, we're demonstrating it with the tools that we have that we think are ideal for that particular given practice segment. But you can find a way to do it for you, I'm sure. So figure it out. Take the challenge, get it done.
Agreed. Yep. It's meant to be a resource. It's meant to give you some tips and tricks. It's meant to give you ideas for fleshing out your own dry fire practice sessions and routines. And so adapt and use as necessary. And just the point is, get better. All right. We believe in dry fire practice. I wouldn't be as skilled as I am if I didn't dry fire in my own time. So it's been a fruitful endeavor for me. So, and many other people, including Jacob, even though he doesn't know it or doesn't think it or doesn't maybe practice as much as I do.
Oh, it's a ditto. My skills would not be as good as they are, whatever they are, if I did not conduct the dry fire that I conduct, right?
Yep. Cool. Well, thank you for the discussion today, folks. Thanks for listening. Again, we thank you for our support, for your support of our podcast. And so until next week, we remind you to not only be wise and prudent in your decisions and to be disciplined in your application of practice, but also a reminder to train right, train often, and train safe so you can fight hard, fight fast, and fight true. Take care.